Good afternoon. This is Matt from the Comic Hall and Roundtable Discussion, and today I've got a very, very special guest. Uh, one of one of the greatest artists that I know of. This is John Beatty, who, if you look right there in that bottom left-hand corner of the screen, you'll see one particular book that has, I would say, has transcended his career, and is one of his most famous covers, and actually, one of my favorite books as well. And John, thanks for taking out the time to join us, man. How are you doing?
Hey Matt, appreciate you having me on, and been doing well considering what this year has been.
Yeah, I can only imagine. So we'll actually get into a few questions on that a little later on. But hey, let's jump right into this thing. And you know,
Okay.
everybody wants to know, man, how did you get started? How did you get started in this industry?
Um, actually, I wrote a fan letter when I was 15 years old to the penciler that I worked with for the start of my career and probably most of the 80s, and that was Mike Zeck. Uh, he was my penciler on Captain America, Secret Wars, Punisher, all those series that were hot in the 80s. And I wrote him a fan letter because I've been seeing his work. And, I was a kid. I didn't know. I wrote a fan letter, and a couple weeks, maybe 3 weeks after that, I got a reply back. And I remember coming home from school or something, and it was in the mailbox, and I saw this return address from Mike Zeck, and it said Hollywood. Now, at that point, the only Hollywood I knew of was in California, but there's actually a Hollywood, Florida.
Yep.
And I grew up in Daytona Beach, Florida, still here. And so it kind of excited me when I read it. I was like, Hollywood, Florida, where's that? So I had to look, and I had to, yeah, we didn't have Google back then.
Yeah, it was Rand McNally.
Yeah. So I found out that, Hollywood, Florida was down in South Florida, and it was pretty interesting. And, like I said, even then it was snail mail, no email or anything like that. So, I had sent Mike some sample work, and he took time to take a tissue paper and kind of go over what I'd done and correct some stuff, and sent me some photocopies of some work he'd drawn. I think it was Master of Kung Fu, and real nice reply from him. And so I wrote back and sent him some more samples, not thinking like maybe I was pestering him.
Yeah,
15, I don't,
yeah,
you're excited,
yeah.
you know, and, we just started, Mike saw potential in my work. So he kind of started, taking interest in what I could do, and giving me that extra little push. And at the same time, as I got older, maybe 16 or 17, I had a buddy, and we were running around to some local like Orlando conventions and stuff. And there was one in Miami, and we went down there, and that's when I actually met Mike, down there at a Miami show, like in person. And we actually wound up staying at his house with his mom and dad when they were still
Wow.
there. He said, "You guys can just come crash on the couches, the floor. You don't have to get a hotel." So
Wow.
pretty cool.
Cool, cool.
And that was one of the conventions that Jim Shooter would always go to because he liked the Miami area. So Shooter was there, and so he was the editor in chief at the time. So he was the man. If you
Yeah.
were looking to get work, he was the one that could, give it to you.
Sweet. It's that's inspirational. And for those who don't know, I'm a photographer off air. And so a lot of times, and this will kind of segue to my next question, is a lot of
Mhm.
times that, people don't understand that to make it in an industry like this, you just have to take a chance. And that's what you did. You took just I just write a letter, something really
Right,
simple, and it turns out
right.
to be a career defining move. What advice would you give young artists? I mean, now we're in an age where I just think about if you had the like Instagram and Facebook, had all of that back then. Now it's just like basically you've got to just get your name known, and then you can kind of get out there. So what advice would you give a young aspiring artist who is looking to do what you're doing or make a living doing what you're doing?
Well, pretty much what you said is, if you're not out there, you're not going to get seen. Um, so whatever you do, there's a book that I need to finish reading called Show Your Work.
I
You know,
got that book. Austin Yep, I know exactly what you're
Austin
talking about.
Kleon, yeah.
Cleon, yep.
And it's true. It's like you can do all the work you want, but if nobody sees it, you know, except for you, it's not going to do you any good. So if your dream is to, you know, have a job in a creative career, you have to like show your work to those people in positions to either hire you or give you advice or mentor you or help you out, lend a helping hand. And with all the social media platforms and even having your own website, whatever, it's so much easier to get out there now. Like I just said, I had to do snail mail, so
Yeah.
you wait, for the mail to get down,
Yeah.
wait for a reply back, and
Yeah.
even phone calls back then were so expensive to call in long distance
Oh
was,
yeah, man. God.
you know, you're you're watching every minute, and you're like,
Yeah.
hey, I got 10 minutes to talk because that's going to cost me like, it could be anywhere from
50
uh,
bucks.
yeah, I mean, it could be very expensive. Now you've got like you pay one price and you can call anywhere and practically anywhere, and that's it. So yeah, I mean, just getting out there, making connections, and not giving up is really key.
Yeah. I usually tell young aspiring photographers that same thing. Just don't give up. It takes time. But
Right,
you
and
know,
that's the thing is, I mean, there are those instances where it's like it seems like lightning strikes, and
yeah.
those are very rare. Most people that get in an industry, they have to work. I know it. I started taking it serious when I was like 15. I got semi-professional work in fanzines and stuff, but I
Yeah.
wasn't ready for Marvel or DC yet. And then when I was 19, so it was like a good 4 year journey of me constantly practicing, honing. And, when you get that first professional job from a company like Marvel or DC Comics, it only means that they're giving you a chance,
Yeah.
chance to prove yourself, and a chance to get better. And if they don't see that improvement,
Yeah.
you're out.
It's a
Yeah,
one shot deal. Yep.
right.
Yep. All right, cool. So let me ask you this. You were talking, you were talking about conventions, and
Hmm.
how has conventions, because you're a guy that goes to 20, 25, 30 conventions a year. How has conventions changed over since you've been doing this? I can only imagine the change that you've seen from when you started up until until this point now. I mean, we're at a point now we're having virtual conventions. So
Right. Well, yeah, that's the big change for this year because of the COVID. Um, but just from back in the day where they were maybe held in a small room of a hotel or something, to now they're packing out big convention centers for 2, 3, 4 days, even some of the bigger ones are run 4 days. And you're just um, it's the good thing is, used to, like in the 80s, it was basically you know all guys. You didn't see
yeah,
a
yeah,
girl. It was some guy that had a girlfriend. You know, and now it's just a plethora of different people coming in. But as you know, it's like at the start, it was just like it could have been this. I don't mean this to sound rude. It could have been like a guy's locker room because it was like a big
yeah.
boys with just, and you would see the same people because
Yeah. They either was in high school with you, or somebody you work with, and
right.
you all just go to go get comic books.
Yeah, and there was one in Orlando when I was younger, and the guy ran the Orlando convention, Jim Ivey, and he had the Cartoon Museum, and this is where I first started seeing some original comic artwork, um, from books and stuff, and it was amazing because he had pages from everybody, and like he had Neil Adams pages, he had some Barry Windsor Smith stuff. He had ton of stuff, and I could just sit there and look at it. And I remember seeing, I think it was a Dead Man page by Neil up on the wall for like $125, and this is probably when I was about 17 years old. And I was like, wow, I could never afford that. Now, had I bought that page when I was 17 and kept it, had
Yeah.
I kept my own
Yeah.
artwork, you know,
Hey, you talking about a change, man. Yeah.
but I mean, you don't know about that stuff. You know,
Yeah.
it's like so the whole mindset and the whole like structure of conventions. You know, it's become a huge business. You know, I mean, they bring in the media guests, they bring in some cosplayers now, they bring in comic artists, they bring in voice actors. So I still prefer the comic book conventions that really drill down to comic books and comic
Yeah.
book creators, because that's just where my heart is. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, it's kind of interesting seeing some of the media people that are on shows you might watch or that have been in a movie you've seen, but I don't know. I'm one that doesn't get starstruck too easy. You
Yeah.
know?
You kind of like me, man. I go to conventions and I see people, I've seen on TV, and it's just, yeah, I guess just me. I just don't flip out when I see people.
Yeah, I don't either. You know, and it's not
Yeah,
it's nothing against that person. It's just you know,
yeah.
it's I don't know. I the only person that I ever had my fanboy moment, and this was probably about 4 years ago, is I finally met Jim Steranko at a Heroes Con,
Oh, that's pretty cool.
and he was like sitting at the tables behind me, and
Okay.
so I knew I kind of know the guy that works with him, and I asked him. I said, "Hey, I'd like to meet Jim." And he's like, "Well, he's got a line," which he did. He said, "Let me see if I can, work you in or something like that." So he came over, and his name's David Spurlock, and so he came over and he said, "Hey, Jim's got a couple minutes if you want to come say hello." And boy, I tell you, Stranko is one of those guys when you meet him at a show. He's one of those people that makes you feel like you're the star.
Yeah, yeah,
It just like blew my mind. And I went back to the table that I was sitting at, and my buddy was there, and I start babbling on about I just met Jim Steranko, and man, he was so cool, and this, that, and he's like, "Calm down, you're rambling." I said, "Am I fanboying out?" He goes, "Yeah, yeah."
Hey, man, you have a right to fanboy out, man.
But that's been like, that's been the only person I had that kind of. I mean, yeah. When Mike Zeck wrote me back when I was 15, I was like,
Yeah,
boom. I couldn't believe that. But as an adult and as an older person, it's like uh, you meet people and you appreciate their work, and it's nice meeting them. Um, uh, maybe I've been around the business too long. I've met a lot of people and stuff, so it's like I'm used to seeing
yeah,
them. You know? So I believe me, I know how it is. When people get to meet the creators that they're really fans of at a show and spend some time with them and stuff. I know
sweet.
how it feels on. I like to tell. I know how it is on both sides of the table.
Yeah.
So I respect both sides of the table.
Now, you said something that I had that we've brought this up on the show several times, and it's the convention scene has become more anime. We were saying, it was
Right.
hard to find comic conventions where it's, with a convention with comics in mind. And I find it interesting that you've even started noticing that as well.
Mhm.
I think let's say I went to about 4 or 5 conventions last year. And the major one, the one we went to, well, we went to one in Savannah that just turned out to be almost like a cartoon
Right.
convention. So you make a 2 3 hour drive to go down there and stay overnight, and then you get up the next morning, and it's a anime convention, and you're like, dude, I could have just stayed, stayed
Right.
where I was, And so we ended up going to the Atlanta Comic Con, which was a little bit more of a mix of things. But then we went to another convention where it was just straight out comics. And
Right.
those are the most rewarding ones, especially if you're an avid comic collector, or in your case, a artist.
Right.
And those are the ones that are really, really becoming rare to find.
Hmm. Yeah, and you're right because everybody is becoming a, well, not everybody, but some of the big shows are becoming just, well, they're even calling themselves now either a pop culture convention instead of just a Comic Con, or they're calling themselves an expo and stuff like that. So the real true comic book conventions are becoming less and less,
Yeah,
But the good thing is when you find some of those, they're really satisfying, and I'm not banging, I'm not or bad mouthing anybody else. If they
yeah,
want to go media guests, that's fine. If they want to meet anime voice actors, that's fine, you know. But what I don't like is when they name a show a Comic Con and then it's,
it's
the
deception.
comics are like last on the list,
Yeah,
It's, hey, it's like it's called Comic Con, but it seems to be centered on everything. But it's like the comics are maybe like not even 25% of what they're doing. You
yeah.
know,
Now, another thing that's changed over the years, and you, of course, you would know this, is that the art has changed. I mean, we've gone
hmm
to where it's completely digital, and I'm an
right?
old school kind of guy, which is why I like a lot of old school comics. I love the old artwork. Growing up, looking at guys, work like yours, and you know, uh, Jim Lee. When people are actually putting pen to paper, I had a cousin that passed away. That's what he went to school for, was for art,
hmm
and I used to enjoy watching him draw. And
Right.
it's just stuff. I understand, that you can do this stuff digitally, but it never is the same as seeing it put pen and stencils to paper.
Right.
And I can imagine you probably feel the same way about that. Is that nothing's going to beat that old school way of drawing.
Well, what amazes me is, I mean, I like technology. It all winds up in the computer at the end of the day, so it can get printed and colored or whatever. Certain things, if you do a painting, it still has to be scanned and put into a computer now, whereas before they'd shoot a slide of it and use that to make a reproduction. But as far as for me, I don't consider myself a digital artist, and I still like the tactile feeling of working on paper with pens and doing that. And the weird thing though is I've never wrapped my head around people buying a digital commission. And yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people on Instagram. They're digital artists and they sell digital commissions and they get money. And I'm like, you're just sending them like a JPEG or
Yeah,
something. You're not getting anything unless they print it out, and then they have that piece of artwork in their computer. They could make prints of it and sell it or something.
yeah.
So I don't know. I see both, you know,
Spectrum. Yeah,
and I think it's good to be versed in as much as you can be, especially in this time. I do, and this is only because I came up working the old-fashioned way, with real paper, real pencils, real ink, stuff like that. I feel that somehow it's easy for me to translate into a digital, like I have an iPad here. I can draw on it, I can ink on it, and it's
yeah,
easy. It
yeah,
does. I didn't. It's like it took me maybe, I don't know, a week or so messing around with it just to learn the program basically. But all the knowledge is here in my head. So all these other people are looking for shortcuts in digital, and it's like, for me, it's just I open up the program once I learn, like, here's your brush, here's this, here's your pressure sensitivity. I haven't really, what I would say, completed stuff because I haven't had the need to. I'll do some stuff just so I can say, oh, I can do it. or I
Yeah.
have done. Um, but I wouldn't want to do it unless it was on a commercial job that was paying really well, which I actually did do um, for DC Warner Entertainment and stuff. I did vector work, which is like Adobe Illustrator,
Mm-hmm.
and I did that for like 7 years in their licensing department. So style guides, stuff that gets printed on uh, toys,
Yeah.
uh, party cups, T-shirts, stuff like that. I did a ton of character, inking and coloring um, for them on various projects. So that was kind of my dive into the digital realm, and it was interesting. It's still interesting. I still have those skills if I need them, but I haven't really needed them.
Gotcha. Gotcha. All right. So, what artist right now is someone that you kind of got an eye on that you like? Is there a particular artist that's
Hmm.
that you kind of watch it, keep eye on?
Modern, old, or
We'll go modern. We'll go modern. How about that?
modern? Let's see. That's uh boy, I really don't keep up with much of the new stuff. Um,
Oh, I tell you what. How about this? What's I tell you what. We'll flip it. What's your favorite comic book cover?
my favorite comic book cover is it might be Captain America 111 by Jim Steranko.
Okay.
Um, that's like a very I because Cap's my favorite character.
Ah, yeah.
So that cover is very iconic and it's been used on a lot of merchandise and stuff. And it's just one of those images that, is ingrained in my head. Um, that would be like like a Marvel comic cover. I can't think of anything from DC off the top of my head that has that kind of impact. Uh,
Larry's on our panel. He'll eat that up when he hears that. The Marvel man. He'll see man. He didn't say anything about DC.
well, I can't remember like. Well, I mean, probably if some of those Neil Adams covers when Neil was producing a lot of covers for
Yeah,
DC.
I'm a
Uh,
big Neil Adams fan. Huge Neil
yeah, I
Adams
mean,
fan.
the Superman cover where he's busting out of the chains.
Yep.
That's a classic. I
Yep.
mean, that's an easy one to remember. And then he had this other one where Superman's kind of like kryptonite's exploding behind
Hmm.
him, got his fist balled up, and he's screaming and stuff. That's a real dynamic cover. Um, but yeah, so he did a lot of covers, so it might be one of his. One of my other favorite artists, who's I think his old work and his new work has just the guy just blows me away is Michael Golden. Um,
Yeah.
he did Micronauts. I worked
Yep.
with him on Nam. Um, he's done a lot of really interesting covers to say the least. His way of thinking and composing a picture is amazing. I don't know how he does it, and it blows my mind when I see a new piece from him, or if we're at a convention and he does a sketch at a show, and it's like this cover quality piece of artwork, and I'm just like,
Wow.
he's
Yeah.
like a table or two down from me, and I keep peeking at what he's doing, and I don't get how he can do that, at a convention, you know, that well. It's
I mean, it's amazing, man, when you think about how art is. And everyone is different, and
right.
and that's the beautiful thing about art is that there's no set way of doing it. It's
Mhm.
like you said, it's up here and then it comes out.
Right.
And so
Right.
when you're able to see someone that does something like Mike, at that pace, and you're like, wow, how do it just blows you away because in your mind works completely different than his
Right.
as far as getting that same product out. But it just comes out different, and that's the beautiful thing about art, and that's
Mhm.
one of my favorite things about comics is that no comic book looks the same. And it's the
Right.
same thing with photography. You know, I can go out and shoot a photo, and then you can go out and shoot a photo
Hmm.
of the same thing, and it'll come out completely different. And that's the
Right.
beauty. That's the beauty of of photography is that everybody tells a story uh differently, and it's the same thing with
Right.
comic books. Everyone draws differently. There's no person that has the same style because if everybody had the same style, you'd only need one person working.
Yeah. And it would be a pretty boring,
Boring industry. Yeah,
you know.
extremely boring.
That's why, I like a bunch of different styles. It's like, I mean, I like loose art, I like tight art, I like art that uh you know, pushes boundaries. I like art that's, kind of maybe safer artwork, so to speak. Um, as long as it does its job and tells a story or resonates with me, then I'm on board with it. It's like I don't care how they got from A to B as long as the final outcome is something that, pleases me. And, I tell, this is one of the things that you probably deal with too. And I tell people, look, I know there's people out there, they don't like what I do. I usually don't hear from them. So they'll say like, hey, I really didn't care, for that. And that's fine because I know, and we can't please everybody.
Nope.
It's like you get your audience, you get your fans and you might get some new ones. But, if you go out and try to please the whole world, it ain't going to happen.
Yeah. Yep. And then you'll just run yourself ragged. And that's
Right.
one of the things you have to learn. I'm speaking as a creative now as opposed to a host,
Yep.
but as a creative, you have to learn that, you can only do the best that you can do and just move on to the next job. And that's
Right. And that's
mainly
why I
it.
say you got to put it out there because somebody's going to like it, somebody's going to not like it, but you can't worry about that. You just put
Yeah.
it out there and move on to the next piece.
Yep. Now, if you could own one comic book, you might already own it, but if you could own one comic book, what would that one comic book be?
Well, that's a real good question.
I stumped John. I can't believe it.
Well, from a financial standpoint, I don't know. Maybe when I was out at Torpedo Comics last year doing a signing with Mike Zeck and Jim Shooter, the owner of the store,
Torpedo,
uh,
that's out in Vegas, right?
yeah, well,
Okay.
they have one in California too, but he had a copy of Amazing 15 that I think was graded, and I could be wrong on this. I think it was graded at a 7.5 or an 8, and they estimated it to be like worth around $1 million at that
Yeah.
grade.
Yeah.
And he said he wouldn't take $1 million for it though.
I mean, I mean, that's a book that you just don't want to let out the house, man. I mean, you just
Right,
once you get it, it's like, no, you know, I'm kind of experiencing that now with Ninja Turtles. I got Ninja Turtles #1, and it's a book that I'm just like, no, this ain't going anywhere. No,
right.
because it's just one of those iconic books. Same thing with Fantasy 15. You got there was just anything that came out, the era it's just
Oh
like
yeah,
wow, you know.
yeah. Well, it's amazing. I guess Avengers 4, maybe that was there's I don't know what it is with Avengers 4, but that's like kind of a one of the Avengers books that a lot of people are chasing. Maybe that was the first appearance of Thor or Hulk or somebody in the Avengers.
I want to say it's a four.
Could have been Thor.
It might have been. No, I think that's the one with the Hulk on the cover.
Yeah, it
I
could be.
think that's it. I'm sure somebody
But
will correct us in the chat.
yeah, I think that's one where, that's become one of those like sought after books, like Avengers 4 for some reason. Just like Wolverine, what is it, one or
181.
181? Yeah.
Yep.
I was gonna say 151. I know it was something like that. But yeah, I mean suddenly that book just shot up.
John, I remember as a kid going to the comic book store, and I remember that book being $30. I think at that time, I think it was $30, and that was
Right.
we talking like 92, 91. And
Hmm.
so $30 back then would probably be the equivalent of maybe 175, something like that now.
Right.
And to see that book, I bought that book at a convention about 3 years ago. I paid 1,500 for it,
Yep.
and then to double back around 3 years later, and then to see it's going for almost quadruple that is amazing.
Yeah, it's like a $5,000 or $6,000 book now.
Yeah, and what's funny is I find it funny that you probably, you might have had some of these books back in the day, and
I don't know if I had that. I think I had the issue after it. Um, but yeah, it's really funny because when I actually did move to Orlando for 10 years. I was over there from 90 to 2001. And when I moved, I had my local comic book guy here. I just told him, I said, look, I'm not going to bring all these books with me. Just bring your van. We loaded up his van from floor to ceiling. And a lot of the books, see, because I got into superhero books a little bit late, like when I was 15. I wasn't like 11, 12 by then.
hmm
So 15 was kind of late, but still, I was right in when things were beginning to pick up a bit, you know. So I did have some good books, but I didn't know they were going to be good
yeah,
until.
nobody ever does. Nobody ever does.
I mean, I had a giant size X-Men, you know,
I mean, nobody. Like I said, nobody ever does.
right. I mean, you know, I know I had at least one copy of that I bought, you know,
Yeah.
but you know, it's gone. Eh,
So
So,
it's
you know,
somebody has it slapped.
yeah, well, but this was back in 1990, so that book probably wasn't even going for that much money back then.
Yeah, back then, no, I probably see giant size X-Men. You talking maybe $75 way back
Yeah.
then, maybe 75, 60,
So
something
it
like that.
wasn't like, you
Yeah,
know, it wasn't like money that could
buy a house.
or, or or at least, you know, be worth a lot more than you know, you could live off of it for a month maybe, depending on, you know, what you got to make to live for a month, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's
So
crazy that we talk about this all the time on the show. Is just how much the value of these books. Like right now, we've got. I'm not sure if you've been reading anything modern or not, but there's a new character in Venom. It's a Noel. It's supposed to be the symbiote god, the master of the symbiotes, rather, and symbiote god. And so his first appearance was, I want to say last year, maybe the year before last. And
right,
I bought it off the newsstand. Thought nothing of it. I like the cover actually. I got the first print, so I like the cover. It's a white, and white covers are typically usually turn out, really beautiful covers if you get them when
right.
they're new. And so I decided I picked that one up. Well, I thought nothing of it. And just a couple of weeks ago, all of a sudden that book is going for almost the thousands. And
Right.
people alert me and say, "Hey man, you seen the price of what this is going for?" And I go look and I'm like, "Are you serious? This book, it hadn't even been a year in the book. The
Right.
value of the book is out of the roof." So you know, I tell people like when because I'm an avid collector of older books, and I
Hmm.
tell people, nowadays you just don't know
No,
what's gonna be hot, and
no.
because
You,
sometimes you would get, and you know this, John, you would get these old books, some books you've read them 40, 50 times. I'm not gonna read this anymore, man. I'm done. I'm gonna just chuck it away, and then
well, that's what I'm saying is, you know, book you got, and then you got to think like, okay, is the value going to increase, or is this, you know, it's like a stock. Has it reached its peak and now it's going to start dropping down? So then you have to go, gee, Matt, do I sell this and buy some old books, you know?
yeah, yeah. I mean that's
Or
where
do
we
I
at.
take a chance that this is going to keep climbing or it could just tank?
Yeah, there's an art form to
And
collecting too.
truthfully, as you know now, you know, as we all know, only time will tell, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. Only
I
time will
mean,
tell.
Secret Wars 8, the first appearance of Spidey in his black costume, we didn't. I mean, this Secret Wars thing was, you know, it was not
Yeah, tell us about that. Tell us about that because I'm sure a lot of people. That's a good something that people would love to hear. Just like kind of the background
Right.
of Secret Wars. You know.
Well, the biggest event that happened was the black costume, and it was no more than when everybody went to Secret Wars on Battle World, they changed somehow, and so Spider-Man got a new costume. So Mike Zeck designed this black costume, and they said, "Yeah, fine." No pushback on it or anything. It's like, yeah, that'll work. It just kind of nonchalantly, good. Okay, let's run with it. And so what happened was over time, over the period of time that Spider-Man was wearing the black costume, it started to get popular and people began to like it. But there was a timeline. I don't know if it was 6, 8 months that things were going to get back to normal. So when it was time to get rid of that costume, the people upstairs to keep track of money were like, whoa, whoa, this has to stay somewhere because it's making us money. So we didn't have a plan for Venom on it. It was just a throwaway thing in Secret Wars. But a lot of people now, you know, they feel like Secret Wars 8 was, they always want to know, did we know Venom was gonna? No, we did not know. If we would have known, we would have started Venom after Secret Wars. Which probably would have been the wrong thing because it needed time,
Yeah, to develop. Yeah,
to
exactly.
develop. Yeah. So no, there was nothing beyond he gets a new costume. Eventually it'll go. And when it was time to go, they said no. And then I think McFarlane and David Michelini had to come up with something to keep the black costume. And then they created Venom and used the costume. And you know, that's just the short, boring truth of it.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I find it. I find it fascinating that even back then, because see, you look at the industry now. There's
Mhm.
always some back and forth. We make a decision, we switch. We make a decision. Oh no, this. You just said it. We're going to give Spider-Man a black uniform. Oh, okay, all right. Well, let's roll out the black uniform. There's no second
Right.
thought. There's no pullback. There's
Yeah.
no anything. Let's just go with it. And now it's changed. It's like you get used to one thing and then they change it, and it's changing. This change.
Right.
This
Right.
change.
Right.
Now it affects you know issues that you had, maybe 15 issues that you were going to do in the book. Now it's down to 3 because
Yeah.
that's not going to work. We got to
Yeah.
start over.
See
So
that's one of my pet peeves, and that's something that kind of really sours me. Is being a Captain America fan. It's like I worked on the Captain America run. My first interior inking was 265 over Mike. I'd inked some covers before that. Um, but we worked on the original when Marvel got it and brought issue 100 out. So, flash forward 165 issues. I'm inking my first interior on the one that Kirby and Steranko and all those guys worked on, over Mike Zeck's pencils. And so then it ran for a while, and then, you know, they decided they needed to change Cap and like all the characters, reboot them,
hmm
start new number one and stuff. So yeah, as a collector and a fan, it drives me crazy too. Um, I almost feel like if they would have just left the numbering alone.
oh man, that's a huge discussion on our panel.
Yeah, well, see, they, again, and I got no money in the stock market because I'm not a rich man. So it's like I can like I can do analogies with the stock market. And if you look at sales on comic books, they go up, they go down, they go up, they go down, with different storylines, different creators, different economies, whatever. So instead of trying to force a new number one Captain America and get the sales to spike, why not just put that story in continuity, and if it fails, then you don't have to scramble to go like, oh, that never happened. Right?
Hey, John, that's what made X-Men back in the day so good, is that those storylines were embedded, midway through.
Yep.
Phoenix shows up to what, 140 or something like that. I can't. Alla correct me if I'm wrong with it, but Phoenix shows up, and it's
Hmm.
Dark Phoenix shows up, and it's in the middle of a run. Well, now
Right.
it's like you said, everything we have to start over, and then we're gonna go number one. This person's gonna show up, that person's gonna show up, and you can't keep running a series doing that.
Right.
The comic reader gets fatigued. You know.
Well, the interesting thing is in 2015, which was the 30th anniversary of Secret Wars, they did a 9-part Secret Wars book. Marvel did. Um, and basically, what they used it for is all these characters that they had created that were not doing well. And this is from what I understand. I didn't read the actual series. Um, and they even like whoever did it actually took panels from our Secret Wars, recreated them. But the biggest thing they did, and this was kind of a smart thing, instead of having to pay a creative team to do like another, like say a 4-issue series, write this character off. Well, they just put them in this Secret Wars, and I guess the Beyonders zapped them into nowhere, so they're gone. Just
Yeah.
that character's gone. We don't have to explain anything else.
Yeah. He's out of here.
They invested in 9 issues to get rid of all these characters that were failed attempts to like get people to buy into them. And so it was kind of clever that they used Secret Wars on its 30th anniversary to do this. And it was, also probably more economical than each of those characters having to be written off in their separate storylines.
Mm.
But it's like, it's a shame that that even has to happen.
Yeah, I mean that you just said it. I mean it's we're at a stage now where Al always talks about the characters that are underutilized can be put in
Mhm.
different places instead of just throwing them away. You can put them in
Oh, yeah.
certain scenarios that they can be used at. And I think a lot of time comic companies just they're looking at whatever makes the money the quickest, and let's just feed off of that. Whereas you can develop. It's kind of like even in the Marvel universe that you've got underutilized characters, kind of like with when they had Luke Cage and all those people on
Right.
Netflix. Daredevil was a character that I said for years had been completely underutilized. Give him a TV show and everybody falls in love with him. But then we
Right.
put him back in the comic book. Now we're struggling trying to figure out how to keep him going, and so you end up having to start over from scratch. You come up with a series, you have to do that again. You start from scratch. Black Panther gets it all the time, and I just saw recently last night. I just covered on our uh, on our little news show that um, they just canceled Ghost Rider after coming
Right.
out with Ghost Rider again. What last year before last,
Mhm.
and now Hulk is back with Immortal Hulk, but there's no telling how long that's going to hang around. And so
Right.
I think that's the problem that we're having, is that they're coming out with these long drawn out series, and then they just hit a wall,
Hmm.
and it's because they hadn't thought further enough to say, okay, well, we can utilize different people,
Right.
or we can bring in a monumental change. I mean, they're doing it with X-Men now with the House of Ten, but those type changes you don't see across the board where characters have had longevity, and that goes back
Right.
to that numbering issue that you were talking about. Having to start all the way back over. You feel like mentally you have to start all the way back over, and
Hmm.
so it creates a lot of confusion for
Right.
people who may have gotten out of the comic book industry, that's getting back in, and then you've got people who have been reading these issues for how long you've been printing, and then now it's like, oh man, I was enjoying that storyline, and now it's gone bye bye.
Yeah. I've tried to pick up, you know, a couple of books here and there to read, and I read them, and I'm just like,
Yeah, throw your hands up.
I'd rather go get something like a reprint that I have that's an old Stan Lee Jack Kirby book, or reread the 3 issues that Steranko did on Captain America.
Yeah.
It's more fun. I can reread them, a lot of times, and I don't get bored with it. It's like comics are I don't know. I don't know if they're trying to overcomplicate comics now instead of just simplifying them, because I really I don't I don't follow enough, because there's not enough out there that interests me. Like this Null character you're talking about. I heard something about him, but I didn't know it got that big, and I have no idea. You could show me a picture and go, "Who's this?" and I wouldn't even know.
Yeah.
Um,
Null is like, if you ask me who would you equate Null to, I'd say Null is like the in the Spider-Man universe. I would say he's the Magneto of the
right.
Spider-Man universe. He's that. That's how serious he is. And then
Yes.
you've got another guy that just showed up, John, um, Black Winter showed up.
Hmm.
He's in Thor, and so apparently this guy is supposed to be bigger than Galactus. I think it's pretty cool. I think honestly, I think it's cool that we're actually
Right.
getting a rebirth of actual major villains, because for a while there, in the comic industry, it was kind of go through the wash and repent, or they
Right.
wash and repeat, or they would come out with villains that really you could not see them, you know, being major villains. I'm a wrestling fan, so it's like telling me you're gonna take a mid card wrestler and just throw him up as the world heavyweight champion, and he hadn't shown you anybody to work, or he doesn't look the
Yeah.
part. Well, these
Yeah.
new villains look the part, so I think
Hmm.
that's the one of the things that is taking off with some of these characters, is that people have gravitated to them because they're looking the part of an actual villain, something that we hadn't seen in a long time. Because I can tell you, I stopped reading comics in the late '90s. I just
Hmm.
kind of fell out with like you said, the storylines. This. The storylines
Yeah.
just throw out comic books. It was just all over the place. And so I was an avid X-Men reader during that period. And so when they just stopped and shut it down and restarted, I just was like, you know what, I'm done with it. And
Yeah.
so getting back into it several years ago, and catching up on stuff that I missed. Now seeing these villains pop up, it's like, wow, I hadn't seen major villains like this in years. And so
Yeah.
I find it quite cool that we're able to kind of get new villains that are actually important to the universe, that aren't just some guys that they just throw up and they'll throw them away next week.
Hmm. Yeah. Like I said, I've tried a few reboots. I've tried a couple new series. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a grumpy old white man.
No, I think if that's the case, then I'm a grumpy old black man. I said, because we're kind of all in the same boat.
Well,
I mean,
then, yeah,
we grew well,
then
we
we're
grew up.
brothers of then we are brothers of the nerds,
Yep, brothers of the nerds, man. Because
because like I said, I'm with you. It's like, give me something from the '60s, '70s, or '80s, and
yeah,
I'm good. When it into the '90s, it starts getting a little shaky.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then
it's
after
bear
that,
shaking.
yeah, and then after that period of time,
Yeah,
it's just like, what is going on? No, who's steering this boat?
yeah.
Because I don't think they know.
Yeah, I
And
will say it's actually gotten better. I will say in the
yeah,
in the in the last 10 years it's gotten much better than what it used to be. Because for a while, man, it was rough reading some books, but now writing's gotten good. I'm not sure if you know who Donny Cates is, but Donny Cates is doing a really good job over at Marvel, reinventing characters. And you know we talk about X Men a lot.
right.
X Men is getting a complete rebirth right now, which is amazing, because
Okay.
for a while X Men, they got they threw on the shelf and nobody even really they just
Right.
whatever stuck to the wall, we stick with it. And now it's
Mhm.
gotten back to its old school continuity, where they're starting to flesh things out. And what we just talked about is that they're starting to get solid storylines that you can hold, that you don't
Right.
you can invest your time into, that requires you to, okay, I'm going to read this, but you just hope in the back of your mind that they don't go back to old methods of, we're going, well, let's just, this didn't work, let's start over.
Right.
And see, then you'll probably end up losing a whole bunch of people, because you make these
Yeah.
grandiose events, and then
Right.
nothing ever becomes of it. DC's
Yeah.
good at that now. DC's notorious for that. They'll come out with a really good series, and then before
Right.
you know it, they'll snatch it.
The other thing I would say that frustrates me is when I have tried to consistently read a new series or something. Um, like when I was active in the business, your deadlines were so important. You know, you if you were on a monthly book, that book was coming out monthly. You know, if you had to do whatever you had to do to get it done, you know, it's like you
Yeah,
were held accountable. Now it seems like if it doesn't come out every month, they can just
yeah,
blow it off. You
yeah,
know, that frustrates me because I want that book to be there. You know, if it's out on the third week of every month, I want to be able to go to a comic store and pick up the new one because when I get into something, it's like a TV series or something. You know, it's like, well, you know, now you can just binge everything because they let it out in seasons like on
yeah.
Netflix. But before, you know, if you were watching a TV series, hey, you had to be in front of the TV like at Thursday night at 9 o'clock or something, you know, to watch that particular show.
Yeah.
You weren't going to see it.
You know, same bat channel, same bat time.
Yeah, and there was something about that kind of made you excited, you know, that you didn't want to miss it, you
Yeah,
know?
you know, it's kind of like back in the day. You know, you probably get a kick out of this one. Is the old what's that old Dallas, the old TV show Dallas? You had to watch every episode of
Yeah,
Dallas to make sure we need to know who killed Jr. You know, we got to find this out.
right.
You know.
Yeah, and then you know, you wait the whole summer to the reruns, and then you find out, oh, it was a dream. You
Yeah, it
know,
was a dream. Exactly, exactly,
it's
man.
kind of a cop out.
Yep, yep. Well, John, we're not gonna hold you any longer, man. It's been a great hour of chatting with you, man.
Yeah, thank you, Matt.
Man, I appreciate you taking the time to stop by. Can you tell everybody where they can find your work?
They can find me at johnbeattyart.com. That's my website. They can find me on YouTube. Just Google my name or just search my name on YouTube under John Beatty. Uh, I'm on Instagram at John Beatty Art and Twitter, John Beatty Art. So pretty easy. Don't get me confused with John Beatty, the strong guy who was on America's Got Talent. Um, but yeah, if you just put in John Beatty comic art or something, you'll find me. I'm not hiding. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of.
Are you on Instagram?
Yeah, John Beatty Art.
Okay, sweet. Awesome, awesome. Well, everybody, we want to say thanks for tuning in. Once again, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And John, you know, we have to do this again, man. I thoroughly had a great time, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Matt. It was. I'm glad we met earlier in the year before all this broke out.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? Before I go, I'll tell you this quick story how I met John. I was we were at the Warner Robins Comic Con, and I was just got through looking at some books, and so I just happened to look down and I saw some artwork, and so I was just flipping through the book, and I looked up, and John was just, "Hey, how you doing?" First thing he said was, "Hey, man, what kind of camera is that?" And so we started talking about my cameras. So we knew we both were Canon guys, and we started talking technology. And he said, "Hey," gave me his card. And when I got home, on the way home, I realized who it was. I said, "It's John Beatty." And my buddy, and then Al was like, "Oh yeah," and I said, "Yeah, I met John Beatty. You know, I got his card. You know." And lo and behold, here we are talking comic books and the good stuff, man. And so, once again, I want to say I appreciate you, man, for taking out the time to do this. And make sure you support John, buy a print from him. You know, we're in the middle of a pandemic. You know, people don't understand art. You know, I'll advocate for artists that, you know, we all are going through tough times now. So, you know, if you can support John in any way possible, please make sure you do so. John, are you doing any signings or anything like that? So if people want to get book signed?
Well, I think the cutoff was August 3rd, but we are doing Jim Shooter, Mike Zeck, and I are doing Secret Wars plus whatever else. Whatever, you know, it doesn't just have to be Secret Wars, but they're having all three of us there because that's usually the main stuff that gets
Okay.
signed graded, especially Secret Wars 1, Secret Wars 8. But yeah, that's happening next week. I'll be headed over to Sarasota to do that signing. But yeah, I mean, right now I'm a little bit booked up on commissions. I probably won't take anything new until after August. this is a beast that I'm trying to finish now. This is
Nice.
a twice up recreation of the Secret Wars 1 cover.
That is gorgeous, man.
I've got Iron Man and Spider-Man left to ink, a little bit of detail down here. I got the lettering to do in the corner box, and then that'll be done.
Nice, man. That looks gorgeous.
Yeah, that's I tell you, that's a lot of work. I think it's
Oh
more
yeah,
work
I can look at that and
around.
tell. Awesome. Well, John, we'll definitely have you back, man. And once again, we want to appreciate everybody for tuning in and hope you enjoyed it. And we will be back again. Thanks, John.
Okay, thank
All right.